Hello, and thank you for joining this webinar. Today I will be discussing 3D printing in the sports industry. More specifically, what trends are occurring in the sports industry that make 3D printing desirable. My name is Cammy Frei, and I'm a consulting analyst here at Blueprint, a consultancy within Stratasys. Blueprint helps customers understand additive manufacturing and where it can benefit their business. Before we begin, it's important to understand what 3D printing really is. For those that are new to 3D printing, it's a manufacturing method that takes a computer file and turns it into a three-dimensional product by adding material layer by layer. People who think of 3D printing mostly think it is a technology used for prototyping. While this is true, it can be used for much more. For example, 3D printing has recently transformed the dental industry for clear aligners. Traditionally, the manufacturing process would require making 2 molds, but 3D printing uses 3D scans of the patient's mouth to make 1 mold, which reduces the overall cost and time needed to make the clear aligners. Additive manufacturing is also used for more functional roles, like the midsole of the Adidas Futurecraft shoe. The midsole provides a flexible and springy feel while being lightweight. It is printed faster than a traditionally manufactured midsole and can be personalized to perfectly fit each customer's foot. 3D printing is also referred to as additive manufacturing, and I will be using these two terms interchangeably throughout the webinar. So, how does 3D printing add value to business? At Blueprint, we have 6 business drivers that explain the benefits of 3D printing and the most effective ways it's used in business today. Freedom of design, embedded functionality, streamlined supply chains, hyper-personalization, low-volume manufacturing, and lifecycle sustainability. The 50 tactics below the business drivers are ways in which these 6 business drivers can be used to apply the benefits of 3D printing. The 50 tactics will appear throughout this webinar, so keep them in the back of your head. Now that we have a background on additive manufacturing, we can look at the current trends that are happening specific to the sports industry. Supply chains need to operate faster because companies are looking to introduce products faster so they can increase their revenue. The bar for performance continues to rise as athletes are looking to improve, but it is becoming harder and harder to find new ways to help athletes improve since we're reaching the limit of what traditional manufacturing can do. Preventing concussions has become the top priority in football at all levels, from recreational football to high school to the NFL. The high number of concussions has led to a decrease in participation in football and other high-impact sports. Consumers are also expressing their concern about the environment and are looking for products that are more eco-friendly. In fact, some consumers will purchase a lower quality product if they know it is better for the environment. Lastly, stadiums are looking to improve fan experience. Since more spectators are watching games on their phones or TV, it has gotten harder to bring fans into stadiums. These stadiums are looking to improve their technology and make games more engaging so it gives spectators a reason to attend a game so they can experience something they can't experience at home. The 3 trends that additive manufacturing can impact the most are safety, performance, and supply chains. Increased freedom of design can increase an athlete's safety because engineers and product designers can create new designs that are not possible with traditional manufacturing. Newer materials and an additive approach can create lightweight equipment that has the same or better strength as a traditionally manufactured product. Lighter equipment allows for athletes to travel at a faster speed or maintain a faster speed for a longer period of time. Compressing supply chains reduces the amount of inventory in transit and reduces the overall lead times, since less time will be spent sending products back and forth. This makes it easier for a company to introduce a product in a shorter amount of time. Let's now dive a bit deeper to fully understand how 3D printing can benefit each area specifically in the overall sports industry. First, we're going to look at safety. As I mentioned earlier, safety concerns have escalated to the highest degree, and most of the concerns are around concussions occurring from high-impact sports like football. Recent studies have found that 40% of retired NFL players show signs of a traumatic brain injury, and some suffer from chronic traumatic encephalopathy. However, the safety concerns go beyond the NFL as enrollment in high school football is decreasing. The graph on the right shows the high school football enrollment pattern from 2008 to 2017, and as you can see, the numbers have been steadily declining since 2008. In the 2016 to 2017 school year, the participation dropped even more as 20,000 fewer students enrolled in high school football. This trend is predicted to continue if nothing is done to improve the players' safety. While I have focused specifically on football, the safety concerns apply to all sports. Other sports may not be faced with the challenge of decreasing the number of concussions each year, but every sport has an injury its players, coaches, or fans are trying to reduce or eliminate. Ultimately, the increased attention to safety concerns and a decline in participation means that the sports industry is experiencing less participation, which leads to a decrease in sales. The most effective way to increase safety is by creating more personalized equipment, and companies are starting to incorporate 3D printing into their products. Carbon and Riddell teamed up to create a partially 3D printed football helmet that absorbs and disperses a force upon impact. Unlike a traditional helmet that uses foam, this helmet replaces the foam with a new 3D printed lattice structure that absorbs and disperses a force better than foam. This helmet was introduced to the NFL in the 2018 season and was one of the safest helmets in the 2019 season. Stepping away from football, Guard Lab is one of the first companies to 3D print personalized mouth guards. While it may not seem like a mouth guard plays a role in safety, they affect more than just the mouth. A 3D printed mouth guard that perfectly fits reduces tension put on certain muscles, which allows for more stabilization in the shoulder, neck, and head. It allows for better oxygen flow, which can also increase an athlete's performance. Through 3D printing, companies can create custom equipment that is personalized for each athlete and can reduce the number of concussions or other injuries the athlete may be exposed to. The less time an athlete is injured, the more time they can spend on the field. This gives the player the opportunity to extend their career as well as improve their performance since there is less time spent being sidelined. Improving safety is expected to increase participation, which will bring sales back into the sporting industry. Once a player no longer needs to worry about safety, their attention will shift to finding ways to improve their performance. Traditional manufacturing uses a subtractive approach, which means it takes material and works it down to the final product. Since additive manufacturing adds material, it can create products using new designs that make them lighter weight compared to a traditionally manufactured product. The increased freedom of design can also make a product more aerodynamic. This lighter material also improves a product's strength to weight ratio because the product will weigh less and be stronger or just as strong as a traditionally manufactured part. 3D printing also improves an athlete's performance through hyper-personalization because the better the equipment fits, the better an athlete can perform. Some current examples of 3D printed products that have improved performance are Nike's Zoom Vaporfly Elite running shoe and a 3D printed prosthetic. Nike's running shoe was made specifically for marathon runners. It has a 3D printed upper, which is the orange-maroon part of this shoe, that reduces the overall weight of the shoe and prevents moisture from getting inside. Before this shoe, the best Nike marathon shoe was the Zoom Vaporfly 4%, which decreased a runner's best time by 4%. This partially 3D printed shoe is 11 grams lighter, making it possible to reduce a runner's time by over 4% and create the possibility of running a sub 2-hour marathon, which has never been done before. Denise Schindler is a Paralympic cyclist and has a below-the-knee amputation. She used to have a handmade carbon fiber prosthetic until she wanted to improve her comfort and performance while cycling. Schindler struggled using a handmade prosthetic because she wanted more pressure on the outside of her knee and less pressure on the bottom of her knee since it was a sensitive area. Fulfilling this demand was time-consuming since the lead time for a handmade prosthetics was 10 weeks. A couple years ago, Schindler decided it would be beneficial to 3D print her prosthetic for multiple reasons. It would weigh less than 1 kilogram compared to the 1.5 kilogram carbon fiber prosthetic she was used to, which meant she didn't need to exert as much energy while cycling. It was much easier to make iterations to the prosthetic because the lead time was reduced from 10 weeks to 5 days. This was a major advantage since 50 to 60 iterations were done on her prosthetic. The prosthetic was also made more aerodynamic since there was more freedom on the design of a handmade prosthetic. Lastly, it was a quarter of the price of the handmade prosthetic. An increased freedom of design can create products that were not possible a couple years ago. Lighter materials and lighter and more personalized equipment allow athletes to travel at faster speeds and raise the bar for performance. When an athlete sets a record or pushes the bound of performance, consumers are drawn to the products that athlete was using. This generates positive marketing, which in turn can increase the overall revenue for the company. A company can aim to increase its sales. However, its supply chain may restrict this if it is unable to produce products fast enough. If a 3D printer is installed in a warehouse, it can drastically reduce the amount of money spent on shipping as well as the time needed to create a product. Rather than shipping parts from around the country or the world, the parts can be printed on-site in a couple of hours. This also decreases the cost of inventory because parts can be printed on demand, which eliminates the need to have excess inventory on hand. Arrivo, a Silicon Valley startup, has 3D printed the first carbon fiber bike frame prototype. Many cyclists desire a carbon fiber frame because it is lighter than a metal frame. However, the carbon fiber frame is so expensive that cyclists purchase the metal frame instead. 3D printing a carbon fiber frame significantly reduces the time it takes to create the frame and the overall price of the frame. The lead time is cut from 18 months to 18 days because the frame can be printed in one piece, minimizing the need to assemble multiple parts on the frame, and workers do not have to wait for parts to be shipped. The cost is reduced because it is cheaper to print the frame than have workers assemble it. Adidas has also incorporated 3D printing to shorten their supply chain. Traditionally, it would take 15 to 18 months for a pair of shoes to go through the design phase and arrive at a customer's doorstep. The steel molding used for prototyping consumed 8 of those months. By incorporating 3D printing, the total production time was reduced to 11 months because Adidas could make iterations on the shoe much faster. In fact, it allowed Adidas to make more than 50 iterations on the Futurecraft shoe, which would not be possible with steel molding. Even though Adidas has reduced their lead time by 40%, they're working to reduce it even more by adjusting how the midsoles are 3D printed. When the first shoe came out, it took roughly 90 minutes to print a pair of midsoles, and now it takes 24 minutes. With consumers desiring products to be released faster, supply chains may need to be restructured to keep up with consumer demands. As mentioned earlier, consumers are drawn to the products that professional athletes wear, especially if it's a top athlete. For a professional athlete to wear a product, they need to be able to personalize it so it optimizes their performance. This means the product will have to go through many iterations without taking a long time. 3D printing is a perfect solution for this demand because supply chains can iterate and print a part in a couple of days compared to a couple of weeks. As additive manufacturing is incorporated into a supply chain, it will reduce the need for other warehouses. Rather than having parts shipped from a manufacturer A, B, or C to a plant that assembles the product, the parts can all be produced in one warehouse or in a store. Once supply chains start to compress, the rest will follow to prevent a loss in customers due to long lead times. Adidas states that in the future they aim to have a customer walk into a store and have their foot 3D scanned and watch their shoe be 3D printed and walk out of the store with their shoe shortly after, providing them an experience unlike any other company. This idea will not be possible unless their supply chain is compressed, and one of the only ways that's possible is through additive manufacturing. It may seem like there is time before these trends become a pressing issue, but there isn't. Athletes need features in their equipment that traditional manufacturing is not able to produce. As you look at the top companies' mission statements and what they strive to do in the future, they all have two things in common: innovation and being the best. To be the best in sports, a company needs to be a leader and be the first to take a risk. For example, Adidas was the first to print a functional midsole for a shoe, and that has pushed Nike and New Balance to follow their lead and introduce something similar. While there may be other technologies that can solve the barriers in the sports industry today, additive manufacturing is able to solve the barriers in this industry and give companies more freedom in what they can use and design. Thank you for watching this webinar, and hopefully you have a better idea of why additive manufacturing will transform the sports industry. If you would like to discuss this content or have any questions, please email me or the Blueprint team at either address on this slide. If you have any questions about designing for additive manufacturing, please check out David Busacker's webinar, Design for the Madness of AM. Thanks again, and have a nice day.